So I call this slide, Can Debt Conquer Cancer? Right? Well, I have no idea whether it can or not, but I'm going to propose an idea that was proposed in that paper, right? So the idea here is very simple, right? You have the big red box here where you pool together a statistically diverse pool of research ideas that you're funding. That's the big red box. But you don't fund it with equity. You fund it with a large slug of debt. Right? Here I have two classes of debt, senior debt, junior debt, and then I have equity. Now, the thing behind doing that is that the debt markets are much larger than the equity markets. They are risk averse, right? And what this allows you to do is actually create a very large pool of money that you can direct towards specific projects. So that is the basic idea here, right? So the green box, which is the senior debt, has the lowest risk and lowest potential return. And the reason it has the lowest risk and the lowest potential return, it has these two things beneath it that are absorbing the losses before it gets hit, right? So the equity risk has the maximum risk and the highest potential return. When you do venture capital funding, you're limiting yourself to that yellow box. Some drug companies have tried this, right? But they don't do it to fund original research. They adopt this model to actually fund the cost of a JV or something like that after the product has reached a certain stage in FDA approval. But there is no reason to think that it cannot be done at a much earlier stage. So here is a very simple technique, and this is precisely what happened during the crisis with mortgages. Instead of cancer research pool, I mean, you basically had a pile of mortgages sitting in the red box, right? And it was sliced and diced. Now people would say, well, cancer is very complicated. Let me tell you that the mortgage market is also extraordinarily complicated because no homeowner, they don't act alike. You need to do a lot of modeling to fix it, right? So this is a very simple and nice idea to get a lot of money, right, into a diverse set of projects. Now the trick here is choosing the projects, right? So let's think a little bit about it, right? Let's say you have 40 projects to which you want to allocate $500 million. Now you're not putting this $500 million over just up front. You're going to put it slowly over time. That's the way these things work, right? You basically, depending on the status of the project and how much the project is throwing off, you would sort of invest over time. And what this requires, though, right, is somebody to choose the projects intelligently, right? So you need collaboration between people from medicine, finance, engineering to work together, to come together to fund this, to choose this pool. And governance is very important, right? The government can play a big role in it, because what you can have is a system by which you provide tax breaks, because if it's forward-looking, if it is really of societal value, right, which a cure for cancer definitely is, right, the government can come with tax breaks. They can maybe make the interest that is paid on the bonds tax exempt. They can make the capital gains that the equity holders get, maybe they lower the tax rate on it, right? So you can have some form of government support against it. And it is clear that I have no idea whether this sort of a thing will work or if it is practical, but it is clear that there is enormous genuine social value, right, done on a very large scale, right? Now, some people will say, what the hell are you smoking? Because $20 billion biopharma fund, right? How are you going to raise this money, right? It's huge. Let me tell you, the debt market is huge. It's very big, right? And the beauty of this is, suppose if you choose the projects, if the projects are chosen intelligently and they are not correlated, and each of them has a 5% chance of success, and all you need is for one of them to succeed, The chance of one project succeeding when you have a 5% chance of success on 40 of them is very high. This would be a simple JEE question, but the number is like 90%, right? So you could have, it's not without risk, but something that is constructed where the debt holder can have some reasonable chance of getting his money back and not suffering a loss, right? And potentially you could find a cure for cancer, right? And this particular paper lays out various scenarios. I can't get into that in a lot of detail here, but it lays out various scenarios, right, for how, levels of protection on the patents, the amount of money that you can make if one of these succeeds, right? Typically with a cancer drug, people don't have a choice. If you have cancer, you will buy it. There's one drug in the market. So basically, you could realize something like, according to the paper, $4-5 billion per annum in revenues. You can have patent protection for maybe 7 to 10 years on an average. And this one results in an internal rate of return of somewhere around between 10 and 12%. So what you have done here is basically taken something that was in some ways misused due to greed during the crisis, and you're trying to do something that is a bit more valuable to society in the long run. So this is the example that I chose for people who want to read more about it and get into a lot of detail. It's a lengthy paper. It's about 25 pages long. I have provided the reference at the bottom of the previous slide. You can look at that. So what does any of this have to do with IITs, right? I want to end with this because, people here are primarily engineers. Having worked in finance for 20 years, what I can tell you is when I got into finance, I had this notion that some sort of a superiority notion relative to people in finance, right? I used to think that these guys were all, somehow I had studied engineering and science. It's a purer thing, and, I'm somehow smarter and things like that. But let me tell you, these guys are super bright. They are very, very good, actually, right? They also tend to be very driven. That pushes them over the edge, but they're very, very smart people, right? As smart as anybody that I have worked with in the engineering or science side of things. Given the importance of finance for society, it needs very qualified, quantitatively trained engineers, So there is a career path for people who are so interested in finance, right? And there are many, many opportunities that for quantitatively inclined people in finance. And from what I hear, the finance firms are taking advantage of it because firms like Goldman and Morgan Stanley are very popular on campus here with BTechs, from what Professor Nagarajan tells me. There are lots of opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities at the nexus of technology and finance. We already talked about there are several new products that can be generated. There are opportunities in investment management, like the fund that I run is really, if you, at the heart of it, we are processing a large amount of data in the fastest time possible. That's what we do. So you can think of it as big data or whatever, but there are opportunities in investment management, there are opportunities in payment systems, there are opportunities in derivative products, new products. There are opportunities in terms of taking products that have been used in the developed markets and moving them to India. Right, opportunities in moving. There's tremendous opportunity set where you can bring both technology and finance together. And the last and most important point is engineers such as yourselves need to have a better understanding of finance. It's very important, especially if you want to scale anything. Right? If you want to start a small company, like the company that I worked in when I finished my master's degree in upstate New York, right? A small company, the company had no ambition beyond being a family-owned enterprise and staying put, which is great. That's a business model. That's a very valid business model, right? you can stay in that cocoon and be very successful and make a very comfortable living. But if you want to take anything and scale it, it is very, very important to have an appreciation for finance, because that's the way you're going to do it. And the last example I gave about drug discovery, right, of creating the biopharma fund is one example of that, right? So that is my talk. So I'm open to questions if you have any. You need not constrain your questions to what I said in this presentation. If you have questions about finance in general, about entrepreneurship, about anything, I'm happy to answer them at this stage. Yes?
You said that IIT was actually the most defining institute of the career amongst all the others that you studied.
That's correct.
Why is that so?
Let me put it this way. When you're in high school, right, you come out of high school into an institute like IIT. The change that you see, right, when you come from your high school environment into IIT, and then you're in this environment of extremely academically bright people, I think that for me, it was very difficult the first couple of years, particularly being a day scholar. I was doing a lot. There's a lot of cooperation that goes on in hostels that I didn't have access to. I was trying to sort of do everything by myself, right? I was living in Indranagar, which is not far from here. I used to go by bike home, and after class, I would just take off. I maybe was in a hostel once, right? But you go through this crucible I went through the crucible for the first couple of years, right? And once I realized that I could survive and sort of hold my own, I was not the best in class, I was sort of a middling sort of student at IIT, right? But it gave me enormous confidence later on. And that delta in the confidence was the maximum that I have seen. Everything else later on, I think once I got into finance, I think as you grow older, you also pick up different skills, blah, 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 but the delta was the highest at that stage, right? And the second factor, which is more of a personal factor, is the friendships. I've made some great friends. One of them is sitting two of them are sitting right here. And these friendships have lasted 30 years now. Very, very bright people, and some people from whom I can learn a lot, even at this stage. I cannot say the same about some of the other businesses, actually, some of the other schools that I've been to. So that's why I rate it a defining experience for me. Yes. Yes, please. Mm-hmm. Yes, it does, right? There wasn't a cap, yes, yes. Absolutely, and that is exactly what is being done now, right? Because what is being done is these incentive chains are being controlled better, right, than what they had been prior. It's a learning process, right? It's all got out of control, and now they're controlling it. They're trying to control it. The jury is out. Now, this is not an easy thing to control. Who knows whether it will work or not? Because there are arguments for sort of allowing it to be the way it is also, that some people make. The argument that they make is the system inherently will fix itself.